Well, thanks very much, Richard, and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to Georgina for that very gracious welcome to country. And I'm really pleased to be here on her country today to talk to you about this really interesting topic. So I'm really pleased to be able to open today's Copland Foundation Conference. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Kaurna people, and I'd acknowledge your chair and the director, of course, of Carrickhill, Richard, and a special welcome to Australia to Annabelle Westman from the Attingham Trust in the United Kingdom, and to a warm welcome to all of the other guest speakers who are here today. And I'd like to commend Richard and the Copland Foundation on this initiative in sponsoring and bringing together this very eminent gathering of people involved in houses, house museums, their gardens and their collections. I understand we have participants drawn from 6 states across Australia, as well as representatives from a number of overseas organisations as well. So I'd like to thank participants for their contribution to the preservation of Australia's cultural and natural heritage, and for attending today, demonstrating your commitment to best practice, professional development, and of course the opportunity for networking, which is really important in all of the things that we do of this nature. It is timely, I think, to have a conference whose purpose is to explore new approaches to a museum sector. And as you'll be aware, the cultural sector faces very challenging times, as indeed all sectors do, given the circumstances economic that we face. It's a time when management professionals need to be imaginative and creative and find people with deep pockets as well, I guess. As Minister of the Arts, I'm interested in initiatives to improve the management of our history and heritage and to assist in bringing the stories of our past to life. Many of you may have heard the talk by Andrew Sayers, National President of Museums Australia and Director of the National Museum of Australia, when he was in Adelaide recently for the Museums Australia Conference, the second conference of that nature that I've had the opportunity to open in my term as Minister for the Arts. In his welcome to the conference, Andrew stated that governments increasingly recognise museums for their far-reaching roles in the vital areas of education and tourism, as well as for the inherent purposes for which they've been created. In South Australia, we've long held this position, our approach to cultural policy, and we have captured it in the South Australian Strategic Plan. To this, I would add commitment to community as the other major driver for successful house museums, gardens and collections. And this is achieved by acknowledging the community of volunteers which support the work of a museum, or the building of strong relations within a neighbourhood, or just the ethos of being great hosts to visiting members of the public. House museums are some of the most independent and creative members of the museum sector. And I think this is for the following reasons. House museums provide specific entry points to understanding a particular place, local history or community. Also, far from being constrained by dealing with particular histories, curators of places can tap into wider themes and stories. Locally, History SA has proved this with its immensely successful month-long statewide festival called About Time. The public also loves collections, and these are another key theme at this conference. We know people are hungry for knowledge about things, precious, unusual and undiscovered treasures. And I believe museums will remain relevant to the community because we do love stories too. But what we particularly value is accurate, accessible and fascinating information. And I'm sure most of you have at some time come across the well-known collector Bob Edwards, either through his work with the Aboriginal Arts Board of the Australia Council, the Museum of Victoria or Exhibitions Australia. Bob, as I understand it, began both his career and his collecting here in South Australia, where in 1965 he became Curator of Anthropology, succeeding Norman B. Tyndale at the South Australian Museum. Bob wrote about the fulfilment that book and paper collecting had given him during his long public career. Describing how his collecting stimulated and supported his interests and career evolution, he stated, and I quote him, "This ongoing interrelationship has enriched my life and provided the basis for success in all my endeavours." I refer to Bob's collecting and career to highlight that however important it is that museums focus on customer interest and advances in technology, it must not be at the cost of neglecting your individual efforts, discoveries and curiosity. You have ahead of you a program of 16 speakers, an extraordinary thing to look forward to on a hot afternoon, who want to share their personal passions and findings, including Tom Perigo from the National Trust in the West, James Broadbent from New South Wales, Jane James, who works here and internationally in cultural tourism, and a final session which gives Victoria a place on the platform with Jim Gardner and Dr. Linda Young. You'll also have the pleasure of visiting some fascinating South Australian historic sites, Carrick Hill, the Cedars at Harndorf, and the haunting Marble Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, for some time I have thought, and I've certainly talked to Richard about this on a number of occasions, that South Australia's own historic houses, and possibly some additional ones, might benefit from consolidated management and marketing. And this could be developed into, I think, a really interesting narrative of the lives and achievements of great political leaders and artists from our history. And to this end, I've asked Arts SA to investigate these and other possibilities. I'd like to close with the lines from Rosemary Dobson's poem on museums. The specific poem is called Their Purpose. Museums must speak of the living, the disposition of the household in the furniture of the past, the great stone in the doorway, its slow attrition by dust, rain and footfall, and movements never completed, pacing feet in the guardroom, lips kissing the icon, the palm kneading the dough. Museums must be the lightning conductors of continuance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for asking me to be here today. I hope you enjoy your conference. I think this is really important work that you're doing, and I do look forward to hearing from Richard as to the outcomes of this conference. And once again, I thank the Copland Foundation for its sponsorship of today's event. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Now I've got to go back and listen to 16 speeches myself.
Thank you very much, John Hill. Another hand for our Minister, please. We love him. Just a few contextual remarks before we introduce our international guest. Stop tittering, Annabelle. I must just emphasise two or three things. The first is this is, despite my tie on a hot day, this is to be an informal conference, and it's to be collegiate. The speakers in the main are all participating in the 3 days of the conference, so we all have access to each other, and this of course is almost as invaluable as the pearls that are going to be cast across this great rich garden of people we have. That was a nice mixed metaphor to start with. I'll change to erudition, which is the reference that the Minister has just made to Bob Edwards and his collection. If you're interested in the introductory essay that he, or the how should we call it? It's a little homage to his own experience of collecting, which began here in South Australia. There are some hard copies out on the registration desk, but his collection went to auction, or not to auction, is available through Horden House, and the website gives you the full listing. It's a quite extraordinary collection of colonial documents. 164, he hasn't released them all. But more importantly, for anybody, particularly South Australians, it identifies bookshops that are past, places where he first of all started laying hands on the real documents, the real things. Even one called the Old Curiosity Shop in the now defunct East End Market. It's very evocative, and I encourage you to have a read. Thirdly, some explanation is needed as to why the Copland Foundation took this initiative to draw us all together, but it hardly needs an explanation because you're all here. I think it's timely that we should come together as a group and look to see how things are going. Without getting too Patrick O'Brien about it, we all sail our ships. You know, we navigate where we determine we can go in the main. And we are captains of our vessels. We live on the fringe of the Museums Australia community because we have special needs or special interests, perhaps. But we don't have a great many chances to get together. This initiative by the Foundation is to draw us together and to see if the value of the exchange is worth the effort. I believe it is. And thirdly, I need to just link the Copland Foundation, which came into being largely through the efforts of Nina Stanton, who many of you have come across. Her last post was at the Johnson Collection, now ably filled by Louis Levaillant, who's with us today and will talk later. And Nina was the executor of Alex Copland, who was, together with Terry Lane, the first Australians to take part in the Attingham Trust Summer School. And they brought back knowledge and enthusiasm and the experience that lasted their whole life. Terry's not able to be with us today, and Alex, alas, has died, which is why the Copland Foundation was set up. We give scholarships and there are many scholarship holders, as you've heard, in the gathering here, to do the summer school, the Royal Collection Study and the Study Week. And the Copland Foundation also gives cultural grants, which some of you have been the beneficiaries of.